Why does men's mental health matter? One of the things that has changed me the most as a therapist hasn't been learning how to respond to someone when they are calm. It has been learning how to stay curious when someone is angry. There have been moments with men in my life and with many of my male clients where I have watched anger, withdrawal, or emotional shutdown appear almost instantly when they were given feedback or a reflection about how I experienced them. Years ago, I probably would have reacted to the behavior itself. But over time, something inside me began to ask a different question. What if the anger isn't the real emotion? What if it's protecting something much more vulnerable? When I stay curious instead of reactive, when I slow the conversation down instead of trying to fix it, very often something unexpected begins to happen. The anger softens. The shutdown begins to loosen. And underneath it, there is sadness, fear, shame, grief, even deep compassion and love. That experience has completely changed the way I understand men's emotional lives, because I don't actually think most men are disconnected from their emotions. I think men have been taught to disconnect from their vulnerable emotions. And when vulnerable emotions do not feel safe, they don't disappear. They often transform into protection. Fear becomes control. Shame becomes anger. Overwhelm becomes emotional withdrawal. Not because men are bad, not because they are incapable of love, but because somewhere along the way, those protective states became the safest way for their nervous system to know how to survive. Hello, my name is Allison Batty Capps of Blossoming Heart Wellness. I am a licensed marriage and family therapist. I am a Reiki master and spiritual mentor and a wellness coach. And today I want to talk about why supporting men's emotional healing isn't only important for men, it matters for all of us. Because when vulnerable emotions become protection, relationships change, families change, communities change. Entire cultures begin organizing themselves around protection instead of connection. One of the most important ideas from internal family systems theory is that our protective behaviors usually make sense. If someone appears controlling, the question isn't what's wrong with them. The question becomes, what is that control protecting? If someone becomes angry, what vulnerable emotion didn't feel safe enough to feel? If someone shuts down, what overwhelmed part of them is trying to stay safe? These are the questions I find myself asking over and over again with the men in my life, and what I have consistently seen in my work and in my personal relationships is that many men don't consciously experience these patterns as protection. They experience them as who they are. I've always been logical. I've always been the strong one. I've always been the one who keeps things together. But when we slow the process down, something remarkable happens. I thought I was angry, but I actually think I was terrified. Or I thought I was controlling the situation, but I think I was afraid of failing or not being loved. These are the moments that are profound, not because the anger disappears, but because awareness begins to grow and relationships can deepen. Neuroscience helps explain why this matters. A healthy nervous system doesn't eliminate fear, anger, sadness, whatever. Fear is protective. Emotions have meaning. Healing isn't about becoming fearless or emotionless. Healing is about becoming capable of recognizing what is behind the emotion and when it belongs in the present and when it may be an old survival response echoing from the past. As people heal, they often develop more space between the feeling and the reaction, more awareness, more flexibility, more capacity to stay while emotionally activated. In my book, The Divine Within, Healing Ourselves to Heal the World, I talk about the neuroscience behind how these patterns form and how compassion practices can literally change our relationship with ourselves, others, and our nervous system. Compassion doesn't make us less human. It helps us stay present with our humanity. And that's exactly what I see happening with my male clients. They don't become less emotional. They have more capacity to remain present with that emotion, and the emotion begins to soften, and they become able to express why they're angry, what hurt lies beneath it. Historically, this makes sense. For centuries, many societies rewarded men for strength, stoicism, emotional control, and dominance. In dangerous environments, those traits helped communities survive. But every adaptation has a cost. Over generations, many men inherited not only cultural expectations, but nervous systems that learned that vulnerability could be dangerous. So today, many men aren't simply carrying personal wounds. They're carrying patterns that were reinforced across families, cultures, generations, governments, religions, societies as a whole. Understanding that does not remove responsibility. It creates context, because accountability and compassion can absolutely exist together. Spiritually, I wonder if healing asks something very different from us than we sometimes imagine. Maybe healing isn't becoming less emotional. Maybe it's becoming safe enough to feel what has always been there. Maybe true strength isn't emotional suppression. Maybe true strength is remaining present with vulnerability without immediately converting it into protection. And that changes everything. It changes how we parent. It changes how we lead. It changes how we love. It changes how we repair conflict. It changes how we build community. When I work with men, I'm not trying to fix behavior. I'm helping them become curious about what is happening underneath the behavior. What happens in their body right before the anger appeared? What emotion are they protecting? What meaning is their mind creating? What old experience is being replayed in the moment? Most men have never been invited to ask themselves these questions without shame. So the work isn't about becoming someone different. It's about becoming more aware. And from awareness, choice becomes accessible. Over time, I hear things not only in my clients, but in my relationships with the men in my life when I approach them in this way. I'm noticing my activation sooner. Instead of shutting down, I'm able to stay with you. I can actually feel my sadness. I didn't realize how lonely I was. I feel more connected to myself and to you. They become less controlled by protection that once looked like strength. And when that happens, everyone benefits. The man, his partner, his children, his friendships, his community, the people he leads. Healing isn't about blaming men. It's about helping us understand the patterns clearly enough that we can begin changing them together. Because when vulnerable emotions no longer have to hide behind protection, love has a chance to come forward. And if this resonates, or if you'd like to go deeper, I do explore these ideas in my book, The Divine Within, Healing Ourselves to Heal the World. Or you can visit my website, blossomingheartwellness.com, to learn more about working with me. And whether we work together or not, I'm grateful that you're here, because I believe becoming more conscious isn't about becoming perfect. It's about becoming more connected to ourselves and to one another, and to the parts of us that have been waiting a very long time to feel safe enough to come home. Let's come home together.